Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow, and I am here with another hour worth of exploration and discovery to go through the community, show you not only the answers, but the thought process that goes on behind those answers so that you can take those to your job as a ServiceNow developer and administrator and become more effective. So that is what the show is all about. This is Friday, January 18th, 2019. And 2019 is flying by very, very quickly. We do this show on YouTube at 1 p.m. UTC every day that I'm available, where I'm at home, not doing business travel, not on vacation or holiday, and voluntarily bring you all the fun. So I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on. Let's see if the magic notification has worked. It has worked today. That graphic did not look as beautiful on the screen as it did on the phone. That is supposed to be the Northern Lights as a black and white shot. But I got a notification from YouTube. You can also watch this on Twitch. I encourage you to subscribe. Click the like button if you find something helpful, useful, mildly entertaining in the next hour or so. And that way other people will know it's out there. If you're watching this in the community later, click the helpful button so that, again, people find there's information out there that you found helpful. Good morning, John. Good to see you. Carol, good to see you as well. And we also do this on Twitch, of course. There are some people that watch that there. Thank you very much. Twitch, YouTube, doesn't matter to me. Twitch keeps them around for a couple of weeks. YouTube is eternal. That's the big difference. Where you choose to watch them. YouTube also has the rolling chat. And I got to get an ad out of the way on Twitch so that I can see that. Thank you, thank you. Not that we get too much conversation on Twitch. Most of it happens on YouTube. That's completely up to you. If you're on Twitch, I have heard people say, hey, I sent you a message, but I didn't see it. So we'll keep experimenting with that, see how Twitch goes. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This is all a grand experiment anyway. If you have more than just a shout out, you want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, what's the weather like, where you're from, in what part of the world, that's a fine thing to put in the YouTube or Twitch chat. But if you got more of a question around ServiceNow, I encourage you to go over to the community at community.servicenow and put it there so that other people can respond to it. You'll get more eyeballs, more voices than just the ones on this video, and easier to search and find your answer there. So community.servicenow.com is where I recommend you go to do that. The other site that I recommend is developer.servicenow.com, which looks an awful lot like this. You can get a free personal developer instance running any of the latest 2 or 3 releases. I don't know if that's going to stay 3 forever, but for now that would be Jakarta, Kingston, and London. And in a few short days, we will have access to Madrid. So at the end of January, I'm planning on, I've heard confirmation of this in the last couple of days, that we will have Madrid instances available as the point that we call early access. That's when customers who have signed up for the early access program get access to Madrid. You can also access it on the personal developer instance, start experimenting, learning about the new applications, the new tool sets, the new APIs, everything that's new in Madrid. Go explore it there. The documentation on docs.servicenow.com will also be available at that time as well. So look for that there. The other documentation that's available on developer.servicenow.com is, of course, the scripting APIs. We've got free learning plans. We've got YouTube videos. We've got developer blogs. Look for a lot of great information on Madrid coming out on the developer blogs on developer.servicenow.com. Andrew Barnes and David Slusher have been working very, very hard to bring you this content. Ben Sweetser has been producing some additional learning content. Mary Ellen Najelski has also been, those 4 people are very hard. They're the driving force behind developer.servicenow.com. I show up for live coding happy hour on an occasional Friday and maybe release a few videos here and there. So look for that information. Good morning, Carolyn Ramsport. Yeah, Madrid is this close for us developers. General availability, I believe, is still in mid to late March. So we are getting close, but I'm getting itchy to start showing things off on this show. As soon as it's available, I am upgrading my instance here. I have been doing some discovery and demo work on the back end with some instances. Dirty little secret that I have is for about the last 6 or 7 years, I think it was 2011, maybe 2012, one of my coworkers said, why don't you use your employee instance and hook it up to the nightly instance? And we can do that. So every time they release a new build on a nightly build, I get that on my employee instance. That carries with it some risks, which I just discovered on one of the Madrid features, because they can create something and take it away. And because it wasn't released to any customers, there's really no upgrade path. And my instance still has a legacy table feature. In my case, it was a reference qualifier that never got cleared out. So a certain field wasn't showing me the list of tables correctly, and I had to Z-boot it. I reset it, I wiped it from scratch, and everything worked fine. But I think that's happened 2 times in the last 6 or 7 years. So I consider that a very low risk. And then if I need to provision another instance and I say, hey, I don't have Madrid, I can always clone my employee instance to that one, and I've got a new nightly Madrid instance. So I can keep building these demos, keep doing screenshots for PowerPoints. The PowerPoint for the February content is coming along nicely. Hopefully get that finished today. Otherwise, I might have some weekend work to do on that. But looking forward to the webinar that we have coming up. At that, you know what? Let's just jump to that since I'm talking about it anyway. No, before I do that, of course, I want to mention the meetups that happen over at meetup.com. Also available on the developer site. But if you want to sign up and get registered for one, of course, we've got the Phoenix developer meetup tonight. So we've got some coding tips. I love these sessions where people just get together and say, hey, what are you working on? Let's take a look at your code. Let's share. Let's learn. Kind of like what we do on this video, what we do on Live Coding Happy Hour, and get other people to say, property would work better there. Why don't you put a function here and put that in a script include and do that? And those kind of coding tips are invaluable because you learn, you grow, and you go, oh, you know what? That's a whole new way for me to think about exploring these things. Good morning, Steve. Steve, I do have an answer for you about the training schedule on Knowledge site. If we go to knowledge.servicenow.com. Of course, that is where you'll find all the information on, let me put that title away, the upcoming information about Knowledge 2019, May 5th through 9th in Las Vegas. The pre-con training schedule is coming in March. I got information from Andy Ho, who is one of our training directors, and he said, yep, we'll publish that in March. So they're working on it right now. If there's something specific you're looking for, we can work that through a back channel and get you that information. But right now, it's a big old list on a table somewhere. So I don't have visibility to the details on that. They will be making that publishing it here on knowledge.servicenow.com. I encourage you, if you haven't gone, of course, Steve has gone before, but if you're watching this video and you haven't gone to Knowledge, please consider signing up. This is a wealth of information for a week's worth of information. And the pre-conference training happens the 2 days prior to Knowledge starting. I believe it's still Sunday and Monday of that week. So you show up Sunday and Monday, you get I think it's half price on most of the training that happens there. You can get your system fundamentals or sysadmin training. You could get scripting. You could get application developer training. You could get ITOM, performance analytics. There's something like 50 different classes that are happening at this thing. The training curriculum is just exploded in the last few years, and that's a wonderful thing. We bring that all to Knowledge for those first 2 days, and then you can just roll right into the conference when it starts and do the hands-on labs, do the CreatorCon workshops. The expo floor is open. It's good stuff. So look forward to seeing you all there in May in Las Vegas. The Sands Convention Center, which is hooked up to the Venetian and Palazzo, same place it was last year. So if you were there last year, you'll know your way around. If you were there for other conferences, same deal. It was kind of fun last November going to AWS reInvent, and they were in the same venue, but it looks totally different. And I was there with Jason McKee, who is the director who sets up all the developer hub stuff. You're going, I know where we are. I just didn't recognize it because all the ServiceNow stuff was gone and all the AWS. I said, our developer hub mission to Mars was over there. Yeah. Well, now there's a whole bunch of other booths and expos. A lot of fun. So we'll see what happens when we get there to Knowledge. What did I skip over? I did meetups. I did Knowledge. The webinar. Let's do this. Wrong keyboard. Let's do the same thing on this keyboard and go to the Tech Now webinar on the 29th. I will not be around next week. I will be at our sales kickoff, so no videos next week. And then I'll come back hopefully Monday, refreshed and recharged and ready to go. But that only gives us one more day before the 29th. So I encourage you, if you haven't already signed up, maybe you're watching this after I air this on the 18th, Go sign up if you want to learn about mid-servers. Craig Stepp has been using these since he started in 2014, and very heavily with orchestration and discovery. I've used them for discovery. I've used them for integrations. Mid-servers are a wonderful, wonderful way to tie in your corporate infrastructure information and seamlessly and securely blend that into the ServiceNow experience, which, of course, for the majority of the customers is in the cloud. So, hope they serve breakfast this year. You know what? I don't know what the situation is there. I will strongly suggest that next time I'm on a Knowledge or CreatorCon call and find out. Thank you for that reminder, Steve. I know that was in the customer feedback more than once, so we'll get that done. Good morning, Kobe. Good morning, Vietnam. All right, so enough about that. Of course, get the right keyboard, get back on the screen. Any scripts or source code that I write today will be made available in the GitHub repository that you see there. If you are watching if we do write any script, there will be a folder for that available, of course, right. We'll put a link in the description. You know the drill at this point. It's kind of like saying subscribe and click the like button. If you need source code, there's your link, and you'll find that in a folder with today's date on it. I do want to point out something before I go too much further, a follow-up to yesterday. We ended kind of on a low note that I went, that looks like a bug. I was talking about using a reference qualifier with a record producer and a form at the same time. And I got something backwards. And a few minutes after I turned off the cameras, I went back to that application and fixed that bug. So what I'd like to do is give a quick follow-up recap on that before we go any further. I've got my personal developer instance here, and I loaded the loaner request system on as an example of an application that uses both a form and a record producer. So if I go to loaner items, real quick recap, apologize if this is a repeat from yesterday. I have an open request here. And when I look, this laptop has a request for a laptop from Atlanta from today at 8 a.m. to Monday at 8 a.m. And when I was clicking this magnifying glass, it was coming up with not the Atlanta ones, because I changed this from Chicago to Atlanta, and it was originally allocated to laptop loaner Chicago 1. So what I have is a reference qualifier that says what laptops are in this depot and available between this time. So I have some conflict checking in there. And it kept coming up with the Chicago list, even after I changed the depot to Atlanta. That's not how reference qualifiers are supposed to work. Then it dawned on me. The reference qualifier for that is in Studio. Collapse this. We'll take a look at that real quick. This is the corrected code. Oop, not business rule. Wrong application. Let's do that again. File, switch, loaner request. There it is. Like, where'd my script include go? All right, server development, script include, loaner CI ref qual. Now, this is a bit of a different use case for a reference qualifier than you may be used to. This one does not instantiate with a new. Notice at the top, it does not say prototype something, something, something. We'll get past the comments here. It does not say prototype. It is just a straight up function declaration. And as such, I don't say new loaner CI ref qual. I just call this thing. Uh-oh. My video on YouTube has went kaputs. There we go. Okay. I need to do a screen refresh. Sorry about that. So what I was doing before in the old script was saying, if I have a variable, then use that to populate these parameters and pass them to this function that checks availability. Otherwise, use the form parameters, current.depot, current.startDate, current.endDate, that kind of thing, instead of current.variables. One case, I'm going to use the variables. One case, I'm going to use the fields. The question is, how do you know which is which? And I thought, if I have current.variables.item, I must be on the record producer. Not a good assumption. Works great when you're on the record producer, but not so good when you're on the form. Because once the form is saved, the variables are part of the form. and I was getting a false positive that said, not even a false positive, it was a true positive. And I can show you that because underneath the hood, you've probably seen this before when you're dealing with request items. If you go to configure form layout, for example, and say add the variable editor, where is it? It's not even on here. Annotations work. It's not even on here. I thought there was a variables. There used to be variable editor, and they are still there. I can't even see them here. Let's see. Attachment chart, knowledge, annotation, resolution tasks, activities, contextual ratings, special handling notes. Okay. They are there. Trust me, they're there. There's the variable editor that you see on the request items where it says the variables from a request item. Record producers use variables. And I didn't know this because when I do the record producer, let's go back in here to service catalog. These records are all being created by a record producer. I can show you this. Sorry about the skipping around. My brain is going a little chaotic this morning, going 800 miles an hour. When I do create new, it brings up a record producer. The record producer is maintained via right here, as you would expect under service catalog, maintain, whatever it is, record producers. And it looks just like a catalog item. It is in the same table, sccat item. And it has variables. And each of these variables down here, for example, who is this reservation for, has a checkbox that says map to field. Come on, bring it on up. Map to field, and it says what field you want to map it to, and I map it to the requested for field. All right, my assumption was that this just maps to a field. The variables really don't even exist after that point. I don't need them. I don't care about them because it's putting it right into a field. Ta-da, terrific, wonderful. That's not the case. The variables still exist. They were getting in the way so that when this reference qualifier came along and said, if current.variables.item, it says, if you have an item variable type, then you must be on the record producer. Oh no, because the form had a variable called that. And it kept saying, you must be in Chicago. And I know this because down here, I was dumping out the JSON payload of what this rec object was. And I was seeing in the log Chicago. I changed the depot and saved the record to Atlanta. Why is it still saying Chicago? And I went, oh, because it's falling into the variable case and showing me the Chicago variable, meaning the variable is still out there and causing grief. So to fix it, it was a simple fix. I just reversed the logic on this and posted that back to yesterday's script. So if you're looking for the corrected version, go to the January 17th GitHub folder, which is out at, if you don't remember that crazy bit.ly URL that I showed here, I'll put it up there one more time, 2A6TKJZ, whatever that means. And it's also at github.com/Chuck Tomasi. And if you look at my repos that are out there, it is the NOWCommunity live stream. And at the bottom will be my 2019-01-17 CI Loaner CI Rough Qual. And here it is with the current.item first. If you have a field, you're on a form. Better assumption. Then if you don't, then it might be a catalog item, because otherwise where would you be if you don't have that? And why is this reference qualifier running? Possibly on a report, I don't know. I haven't checked that case, and I hope I don't have to worry about it. So that is the follow-up from yesterday about variables, reference qualifiers on a record producer. Now, if I change this, obviously if I say, hey, I want a laptop from Atlanta, and I'm going to use it tomorrow from 6:19 and 5 seconds to 6:19 and 9 seconds. I'm going to use this laptop for 4 seconds. I better log in really quickly. From Atlanta, I would expect to see nothing here because it says there aren't any available. That other one is being used from Monday to Friday. And if I change the depot to Chicago, it pulls up the reference qualifier and says, yeah, I got 2 in Chicago that you can use. Likewise, if I go back to this record, it's calling the same reference qualifier and say, do you have any laptops available? It says, no, they're not in Atlanta. But again, I can do this in Chicago, and it works as expected. This may seem fairly trivial on the use case, but that's what we want, is a transparent and equal output for both of these. It was not doing that without putting in that if condition to say, do you have variables? Are you on a catalog item? Do you have fields? You're on a form, that sort of thing. So that's the follow-up answer. Whew. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Checking in from Chicago. Jay is back. All right. Good morning, Jay. Haven't seen you in a while. Had a wonderful podcast meetup last night, and we were talking about live streaming. So, of course, I had something to say. Okay. I do have, let's see, I think I have one more follow-up. Let me bring up my notes for today. I think the other follow-up was the training follow-up for Steve. We talked about that. Come on, docs. Yep. Yes. Pre-con training is coming in March. Advanced reference qualifiers. Those are my two follow-up items. I did have a couple of community items that I dug into this morning, and I would like to show those to you. As I was working through them, I went, good discussion topic. So the question is, how do I get reference data from one field in a user form using a script include? Make that a little larger. The description is, I have created two fields in the user form. I'm assuming sysuser. A and B. Field A is a list collector and referencing a group table in field B. I misread this. I thought it was a list field. If he says it's a list collector, then it might be a many-to-many table. So many-to-many is going to be a different solution. I just reread this and I went, I may have given him the wrong answer. But anyway, under the assumption that it's a list field, list fields are basically reference fields that can hold multiple sysids. They are simply comma-separated sysids. Think of it as a related list in a very, very simplified format that is part of the current record, whereas a related list is an entirely different table that points to the current record. Okay. A field B is same type, but populate only those groups which are selected in field A. So he's mentioning fields, but then he says list collector. So that's the part that gets me a little off. Might be a terminology thing here. So I'm going to go back to my original assumption that this is a list field because he says field more than once. I said you can create a reference qualifier in the list field, and that would be done very similar to, let me go to global, incident. Yes, I went to reload site. No. Incident, our favorite field to pick on, because it has a ready-made list field called the watch list. And if I go to the watch list down here and say show watch list, it says this is of type glide list. And it references sysuser. So if I look at this and configure the dictionary entry for that field, we can see that it references sysuser, has no reference qualifier on it right now. You can configure a very simple reference qualifier to say, maybe the only people I want to show up in here are active equals true. If you want to do something a little more advanced, you click the advanced view down here at the bottom in the related links, and eventually up comes the advanced view, which also shows the attributes field. Now I have the ability to choose a reference qualifier. This is the filter on this field to the other table. If you haven't dealt with reference qualifiers before, very easy to use. You can configure them just with the condition builder. Say active equals true. Suddenly the entire list of records in the sysuser table is filtered down to just the ones that have a true value on the active field. You could also filter by department. You could filter by any of the other fields that are on there. You can even dot walk to other fields. So if you have a reference field like to location, maybe you only want to show users that are in locations that are active, for example. You could do that very easily with the condition builder. The secret to that, of course, is to go down to the bottom and you'll see this show related fields. Then you can drill into those reference fields. But in my case, I wanted to show a reference. Dynamic is where you want to do something like is me, assigned to me. This one doesn't have one defined for this right now, so not much of an example there. And of course, advanced is put in whatever you want. Now, if I just did that right and saw that, I said active equals true and maybe city is Chicago. If I did that right and then went to advanced, look what it does. Oh, this must be a holdover. I thought it was translating it for me. That would have been nice, right? Make an encoded query out of my condition builder, which would be really simple, by the way, to do as a client script. But anyway, what I had there a minute ago is an encoded query. This is a string. Where do you get encoded queries? Of course, you get them from lists. I am going to show you one particular list of incidents, and I can make an encoded query either by doing something like filter out or use the filter builder over here, and category is hardware, software, whatever, you make it up as you go. Run this. As it builds out these breadcrumbs, I can right click here, say copy query, and if you want to see what that looks like, paste it into an editor. It is field equals value, up caret, field equals value, and the up caret is anding all of these together, unless you see up caret or, oops, I don't know how I did that. Then it would be an or condition, which corresponds exactly to what you see here. Open that up and it says active is true, priority is not planning, priority is none. There's my or condition in there, and that's exactly what I see here. These are not the easiest things to write, so I don't encourage writing them directly because they're prone to syntax errors. What I encourage you to do is build it out with the filter builder first, then go and create a script. I've made a video of this. Craig Stepp did a quick tip on one of our Tech Now webinars to show you this. It's very easy to take this and start putting in variables and create a string to do that. So the idea is you take this, then you go to your reference qualifier, and you could either paste this in and say JavaScript : return this. Maybe you want to pass in a variable plus current dot priority, and then go back to creating your string. So you can pass these in as parameters and construct it this way. However, if you want it in a reusable script include that you can call from multiple places, like I did with the other reference qualifier on the reference field from the record producer and the reference field from the form, you can repurpose this and call a script include much like I did. You don't have to use a function definition script include. You could use one with a prototype and say new my reference qualifier, pass current into it, and be done with it. Or you could just use the straight up function definition kind, get that, and say my reference qualifier current. Then, of course, go and create a script include that calls that. Your script include would look something like function my ref qual. I'm going to call it gr. I'm going to hate myself for doing that. But try to pass current in so that you use it as a parameter and not expect it to be there. I've made this mistake in the past. In fact, I think there's still bits of code in the loaner request system that have current in a script include. Try to avoid that. Then, of course, you do something like, let's make an answer string equals nothing, and then you can start constructing answer. Answer plus equals active equals true. Answer plus equals up caret, priority whatever. Okay, you can cheat and do this. Forgot my up caret. I like to break them out onto separate lines where each field has its own line. Easier to read, easier to debug for me. That's just a thing. I just find this a little easier to read and do rather than try and cram them all on one line, and horizontal scrolling drives me nuts. That actually is empty. Interesting. Answer plus equals. Okay, now that I've got this string constructed, I simply return answer. And of course, anything that is on current should be gr. I'm passing in a parameter, I'm using the parameter, I'm creating this encoded string, I return it, and it gets put in here as the encoded string, and my reference qualifier works that way. So that's a little bit about advanced reference qualifiers and how to use them to filter a big list dynamically. Now that you know that, that is exactly what is happening right here. I'm doing it in 2 stages. Let's leave that. When I look at this and say, show me all the Atlanta laptops that are available, it's taking the value from current depot, current end time, current start time, and current item type. Now, what is going on there is I'm not passing the word laptop. It's actually using the table name to say, what table should I go get? So as I add more classes of things to loan out, maybe I'm going to do mobile phones. I could create a CMDB table, whether it's U_CMDB CI mobile or just U_mobile or whatever your naming mechanism is for your tables. You could add more classes and then just slap a label on it, because that makes the reference qualifier much easier. And it becomes the parameter from the field or from the record producer variable into this and says, go get me a list of all available CIs, which is hiding out in this script include. Again, layered architecture, easy to debug, easy to write. Let's expand this out and squash that down to get a little more code on the screen. And available CIs creates a list down here, he calls is available. Available CI says, okay, smarty pants, you give me a class name, a depot, and a start and end date. Go look at the CI table that is passed in. Okay, that's CMDB CI. If there's a property that filters on install status, add that filter. I want all the CIs that are loaner capable. So I added a field called is loaner onto the CMDB CI table so that any CI could potentially be a loaner. Then filter by table, then filtered even further by depot. So I'm taking this list of hundreds of thousands of CIs and whittling it down so that I get just the ones I want. Now I need to check availability for those loaner CIs. Yes, you have 2 in Chicago. Which of those 2, if any, are available? So the ID is passed into, there's a property that says, do you want to check availability or do you just want to let people conflict with each other? So there's conflict checking that I can turn on or off. It's on by default. Then it says, is this particular CI available between these 2 dates? If it is, push it into this array. Is available does that conflict checking. And that does an entirely different query that says, go into the list of known requests, which I currently only have 1, so pretty easy. And I want to look at all of the active requests. Here's again, same kind of thing. I took an encoded query, added some parameters to it. Work start needs to be less than this. And this query looks pretty nasty. Again, I built it with the list filter to say, help me build this out, and then started working on it as a parameter. To get to this point, it took it was some whiteboarding of, here's a reservation, is this overlapped, is that overlapped, is it not overlapped? And I had all kinds of permutations of where could a conflict potentially exist and when do I want to say it's available. It really came down to if the start and end date are not overlapping, and that's what that says. It's really down to that and that. Okay, the other part is the same thing. I want active requests for this CI and then check the due date, the start and end date. If you get a hit, you return it. If you don't, you don't. So if you get a hit, then you add it to the array and say it's not available or it is available, that kind of thing. So reference qualifiers and advanced reference qualifiers are not as scary as they may seem, and they can be very, very powerful. And I absolutely love the fact that when you're looking at a request, that would be a loaner task, that would be a loaner item. When you're looking at the request and you trigger this thing and say how many are available in Atlanta, it's already done. If you change it to another location, I don't have to save the form that the reference qualifier says, oh, use current, not from the database, but from the form value. That's brilliant in my opinion, because now it's using the Chicago parameter from the form. I don't know how that happens, and frankly, I don't care, but it's a really cool thing. So that is a follow-up to that one, and the discussion went on a little further about, well, how do I do that? And you need a little script, and I'm not going to get into that one, but I will put that in the show notes for today. And then close child incidents when parent is closed. There is a business rule that does this, and for whatever reason, this person said, hey, it's not working quite right. I know Jakarta is a little aged at this point. Jakarta, Kingston, London. Not that bad, I guess. Year and a half now? Wow. Time flies. Time flies. You're going to have to upgrade soon because I think Jakarta goes end of life or out of support as soon as Madrid comes up. So it says, I'm trying to solve a ticket of out-of-box functions. I've tried using the business rules close child incidents when the parent is closed, but it's not working. I said, there's two things you need to look at. First, go to system, turn on System Diagnostics Debug Business Rules. If you haven't dealt with this before, I'm going to close Studio for a sec. If you haven't dealt with this before, debug business rules. There's business rules and there's business rule details. Details will show you what, if any, fields are changing. So if you go to debug business rules, it doesn't look like anything happens, but this is very, very handy for debugging your business rules. Because now when I go to incident, for example, and I take an open incident, even just opening an incident, scroll down and you will get a wonderful wealth of information. And in here are the business rules that are running. You'll see things like, I'm going to make that a little larger and collapse that just because we're showing it on screen. It says, here is a global business rule set system flag. I went into the business rule here. I could click this and see that business rule, which is very handy if you're trying to debug it. Or it didn't do anything, so it came back out. So it ran something in there. It may have actually done or changed something. If I turn business rule details on, I would see between this little arrow icon and this little arrow icon what actually happened to that record. Here's one that says triple equals skipping. I didn't run it. Why not? Because this condition did not evaluate to true. So you know how you have a condition field, either is a condition builder or as a condition field with script in it like this one. That needs to evaluate to true to run the script. In this case, it did not. This is why I recommend if you have a business rule and it only has one if statement on it. Let's say, for example, you say if active equals current.active, if current.active, okay, then you run some script in there. That condition is better served in the condition field of a business rule because it makes it easier to debug. If you have an empty condition field and your script just says if active, current.active, run some script, you're going to run into an issue that you can't really tell. Yeah, it's always going to run, but did it run the part that I wanted it to run? And then you start putting in debug statements and it gets messy. This is an easy way to say, did it evaluate to true? And this is what I told him. I said, do you know that this closed child incident is running or not? Turn on debug business rules and go look through here because you will see something in here that says closed child incidents. This one just loaded the form, so it's not running. It's set to insert or update. If I were to take this incident, this is really hard to do when it's really big, and say, let's change the state to closed. Of course, it's going to gripe at me and say, you can't do that without providing resolution information. So we'll produce this and say, demo community live stream and save it. Now, maybe in here somewhere, I should see closed. Oh, this one is showing details. Interesting. Okay. Task active state manager, setting task to inactive. This is the part that manages the active flag for us. And I don't see, oh, there's marked closed. Went in, went out, went in, went out. Some of these you may see run multiple times. This is also fascinating from a research standpoint of when you're doing an import and you see that checkbox that says run business rules, It's not only business rule, but it is workflows as well. If you leave that on, how many additional business rules are running? And when you update a record, how many other records does it touch? It's crazy how the tendrils expand out. And if you don't need to run business rules and you're just importing records for the sake of importing records, that could be triggering notifications, that could be queuing events, it could be doing all kinds of things that you really don't need just to do an import. All right, side topic there. But this is the way to find out. Update child incidents. There we go. So it's skipping it because current is valid record and state changes to resolved and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so it didn't do anything to these child records. I could go into this business rule, take a look at it, and say, why not? So there's the condition in the advanced section that says, am I going to run it? In this case, no. And it calls resolve child incidents, which is down here, update children. And the key to updating child incidents is knowing what field it's using as the parent-child relationship. It could be parent, it could be task, it could be parent incident. Different tables use them in different ways. So be sure you understand which field is being used as that reference. How do you know? Related list can tell you that. If you go down to the related list and you say configure related lists, it's going to say we have incident to parent, we have incident to parent incident. It's whichever one you're using there. Check. This will tell me I'm using this one says you are using the parent field as your connection between those two. You are using the parent incident. If you're not sure, you can always go into one of those child incidents and say which field is being updated. It's usually the one that's being displayed, because if you're not using it, why would it be displayed? So know which one is connected there. Then that has to have the same value as the current society. So I've got my current record here. Are there any other incidents or tasks or CIs or whatever that have that parent incident field that has a value of the current record? If so, that's a child record. That's all this query is doing. That's the key to it. And that's what I said in my response somewhere out here. I said, this is what a typical one would look like. For sake of completeness, I will put that into the GitHub repo after the show is done and review that here. I encapsulate this in a function, even though I don't know where they're going to use it. The important part is not that, but if it was in a UI action, this wouldn't do any harm. Go to the incident table, look for records that have the parent sysID. Could also potentially say active equals true or something like that. Maybe I don't really want to update the child records that are already closed or resolved or whatever. All right, so add additional queries here if you need to. For each record you find, set the state, do an update, possibly copy over any comments, copy over anything else that you want to put into those child records before you close them out. What is the difference between parent and parent incident? Says Apunam. It really depends on who architected this and what you want to. The key difference that I shouldn't say it that blatantly. The key difference is one points to task and one points to incident. Why is that important? Let's go to configure. I gotta make this one level smaller so I can get my hands on that menu. Configure table. Yep, he's already got it. I think my video is a little delayed. So if you look at the columns, some are, of course, inherited from task, including, good question, by the way, parent incident points to incident, parent task points to task. This one comes from the incident table. This one comes from the task table. It was inherited. So there's the advantage of, hey, I get a free field. I can point to any task I want. But if you want a parent-child relationship between incidents, and here's the important part, you want to dot walk or you want to get information about an incident, you have to use an incident field. I've made this mistake more than once. I'll use a built-in field that points to task, but you can't get those incident fields off of that reference field. So if you're dot walking to task, you can't see incident.category, for example. That is a field specific to incident. Not going to happen. So you have to create this secondary one, build it, maintain it, use business rules around it. That's the key difference between these. And I believe I did this on the loaner task table too. Originally, because it was inherited from task, it had a parent field. And I went, great, I've got a parent-child relationship. And then when I got into, I think it was reporting or some script to say, give me one of these values from the parent field down to the child, it went, you can't get there. And I went, oh man, I got to go create another field. I got to re-architect. It wasn't the happiest day of my life, but there's advantages to one way over the other. Of course, if you use a task table, you could point it to any task, which may be handy for relating a change to an incident or problem to a change, or any task to any other task. Parent is a wonderful way to do that. Use it. You could put a reference qualifier on that to say, I only want to list incidents. So your reference qualifier would be class equals incident. Easy enough. But you still can't dot walk because it's pointed to task. So you could filter it, but you can't get that information. Wow, great discussion. I can't believe how far we've gotten on reference fields and reference qualifiers today. That's just amazing. I still haven't even looked at a single question in this thing. I better check and see if there's something in my inbox. Let's go look at that. And the community tab got pushed way over here. Okay, can percentage. This is an old discussion that I think just recently got a new life. Yeah, I'm not going to jump into that one. So apologize about that one. Let's go see. Is there anything new to explore? It's been so long, I think it timed out on me. Sign in. Should already be signed in. Take a drink. It was signed in at the top of the hour, so it must have a 30-minute timeout, like many instances do. And which means this didn't update also. Go update my inbox real quick. Cha-ching. There we are. Back to the community. View rule by assignment group. Looks like it was replied and marked answer. This is going to be interesting. Is it possible to create a view rule for members of a specific assignment group? I want members of our HR investigations assignment group to have the default form view called HR investigation instead of the standard form view that other users get for this table. If so, what would the script look like? And Encore, who is very knowledgeable, has written, you can give that group a role in the view rule, check if that user has that role, and show that specific view. So view rules, very handy if you haven't dealt with views before. Incident is a good example again. Let's go take a look at incidents, active equals true. Note if you use incidents from self-service, it is going to pull up the self-service view by default. You can tell that right up here. And even though I'm an admin and I've got rights all over the place, this is still the self-service view because that module is defined to launch the self-service view. Waiting. I did hit something, right? Yeah, module definition, display name incidents, link type, and somewhere down here, incidents opened on your behalf. I thought there was a view in here. Visibility, view, right application. I swear it was in the module definition. Where application menu. Thought I saw it. It's not there. Link type. I thought sysparm view was in here. Interesting. Unless there's something on the form that I'm not seeing. Let's go to self-service and see if there is a view that is not listed here. View name. It's not on the form. So we're going to personalize the related list so as not to corrupt the rest of the world. Like there is a rest of the world on my personal developer instance. And which row is it? Incidents. Here it is, down on this line. View name is ESS. So the module is forcing this ESS view. That is the view name for self-service. There are, of course, other views that you can use. Even though this is directing us to the self-service view, we can either from the list view go to view and say, I want the default view for this list. And whatever you choose on the list is what you're going to get in the form. It doesn't have a form view and a list view. It is what it is. So to keep it consistent, be sure you recognize that when you're configuring forms too, because you may be doing this on the wrong view. Very handy because you can create different, almost like filters, masks, perceptions of the table information that's presented. Maybe that's a better word, but different presentations of that. To do this via the module, I showed you that. There's a view name field that isn't on the form for whatever reason. You do need the view changer role, or of course admin, to be able to access this view menu here. So there is a role view_changer. If you assign that to somebody, they can now change views. If you encounter a view rule, view rules are immutable, let's say. Once you get assigned a view by a view rule, you can't change it. That's why it's a rule. So if I were to go to, let's find a table in here that I can actually get to. That has a good example. SysUI policy, interesting. Advanced, okay, there's a good one. If this condition evaluates to true, I don't like that one. Let's do a different one. Let's get a metric category, not breakdown. Notification. That one also has an advanced. Note that the name here may not be the same as the label. The label said self-service. The name was ESS. It's kind of like fields. There are some that are special to ServiceNow. SP is a service portal view. ESS is a self-service view. If you want to use the default view, ironically, you don't name it default. You leave it blank. Let's see, assessment metric. Okay, so some of these, like notifications or the dictionary entry, have a UI action that says advanced. And if you're on that rule, I want something that's more conditional. Okay. Type equals vCalendar. No. This is getting crazy with the horizontal scrolling. This is why I don't like wide lists and don't recommend them. Custom application. Global. Custom application. Okay, here's one that says global is going to behave differently in the sysapp table. So if I go to sysapp.list and I have a global scope, scriptless schedule jobs, it is going to use the global view. This view is configured differently than, say, this record. No, that's still a global view. I'm still in the global view. Can I change the view? I can. Ooh, interesting. That should not have been there for a view rule, unless the view rule has something in it now that I don't know about. But when I've set view rules, I say, if category is hardware. I thought there were some on change request. Let's do that. View rule. Thing. All right, I'm just going to go for the throat here. Equals change request. We don't have any view rules on change request anymore. Interesting enough. How about change percent? Contains change. How about that? Nothing. All right. Bad demo. I'm going to use up all my time just chasing down a demo. Anything for incident? Probably not. Okay, how many of these do we have anyway? 95 view rules, and I can't find one that demonstrates my topic. Anyway, maybe it's an admin thing. View rules can force you to a view based on fields, based on conditions, based on calculations. The other way to specify a view is with the sysparm view, and you can see it in this URL. You might not be able to see it, so I'll bring it out here, put it in there. At the end of this URL that says, go to the sys rule, blah, blah, blah. At the end, it says sysparm_view 3D, %3D. %3D is the equal sign, and it says use nothing. So therefore, when I go to view rules, I'm using the default view. If I were to, do I even have a different view? I don't have a different view here. Let's do a different example. Go back to incident, because I know it has lots of views. Incident open. And change the view to self-service. Take a look at that. Put that one up here. And that one will now say sysparm user, sysparm, in here somewhere it says underscore view. 2 of 3. There it is. How did I miss that already? Whew. There it is. Okay. Kind of tricky to see. Oh. Interesting. There's 2 things in here. Well, 3 things. 3 things in here that I want to take a note of. Oh. See if I can get this. Okay. 3 things in here that I want to point out. I'm going to break these down and I'm going to translate them for you. One is, of course, our old friend sysparm view, which you can see here, and I mentioned that's what it would look like. Sysparm view, if you were to give it a URL, just like any other URL. The reason it's got the encoded query, the %3D, is because we are going through nav2.do. So to avoid confusion about the parameter arguments to nav2 versus the parameter arguments to incident list.do, it says go here and put it in this frame. That's what nav2.do's job is to put it in that content frame. So underneath, when it gets translated, sysparm view is here. It also says if that doesn't exist, then look in sysparm user pref incident list view and set that to ESS. So you could have a user preference that says, when I look at an incident list, use that. And without the underscore list in there, there is another one. That makes me curious to want to go look at the user pref table and see if there are anything about the user views. Let's do that. Journey of discovery is the last thing I'm probably going to do today. User preferences, they're like properties, but they're specific to the user. So when I say, hey, I'd like the application picker at the top, or I would like to sort by number, those are user preferences. They're specific to me. Now, I can set default user preferences by going into this table and interesting, there it is. That's how it's set. I can set it to system and remove the user, and it says, all right, everybody's going to get this as a default if they don't have their own. So if you wanted to make a new global preference and say, this is everybody's default preference, you could do that. Create a record. I think I've written a blog article about that somewhere years ago about how to make a default preference. This is not a system preference. It is mine, and the value is ESS. So when I chose to use the self-service view, it recorded it here in 2 places, in the incident.view and the incident under list.view. That's how it keeps them in sync. And it says, you are going to use the ESS. Now, to make sure that that gets passed on from record to record to record, and as I navigate around, it also puts them in the URL so that it can use the URL history, or the URI history to pass that information back and forth. Why is any of this important? If you're doing Service Portal, if you're doing UI pages, if you're doing something where you need to navigate from page to page and you want to pass that information, you're aware of what the user preferences are. You could get them at the time of page load, but you could also pass them on the URI. So user preferences, very handy to know about. If you haven't explored them, change a few things and then sort from date updated and find out what you just changed. So here is a module. Apparently I did something to a module that affected my user preference. Navigator collapsed. Okay, I shut this down, minimize Navigator. It checked that. Then it checked it back to no. That way, the next time I log in, I will have these user preferences set the way I want. It's like, why is that popped open again? I collapsed that. It will remember the next time I log in. If I do that, refresh this list, it will now say navigator collapsed, yes. Some are true, false. Some are yes, no. I don't know what the standard is there, if any. Some are string values, some are sysids. You get the idea. But if I were to log out right now, log back in, my navigator will still be collapsed because that's what a user preference does. So that's about it for user preferences and about all I've got for today. Happy Friday. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you not Monday the 21st, but Monday the 28th when I return from our sales kickoff. I'll talk to you then. Have a wonderful time. If you've got any questions, if you found this entertaining and useful, click the like button, leave your comment in the descriptions. If you're watching it on the community, of course, add a reply there and click the helpful link. Much appreciated. Until I come back and talk to you again, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful week. And I will talk to you again soon. Hope to see you at Knowledge or Developer Meetup very, very soon. Take care. Bye.